Hey folks, how's it going? Dr. Spin. I'm sure you've been wondering for a while now, if you know me, been thinking, well, the Frank Sinatra's been good, Dr. Spin, and like the Police, that's good too, but where's the weird stuff? I know you're into some weird stuff sometimes, and we're just been waiting for it to show up. Well, I got one for you. This is an album, one of my top 5 albums of last year. It's an album by a band called the Venetian Snares. Traditional synthesizer music. Now, discovered this album on a Bandcamp best of list. It's like electronic, best of electronica from last year. And I mean, look at it. Okay, just think about the title of the album and look at it. I mean, how can I resist this? Traditional synthesizer music, and it's got an album cover that's like completely evocative of the like late 60s electronic experiments. I mean, I had to check it out. Let me give the background on it. So, everything in this album, the album is produced by a gentleman named Aaron Funk. He makes music under the name of Venetian Snares. He's made several albums, but this one, I think, according to what I've read, I don't know any of his other music at this point, but this particular album took a little bit of a detour in that he really delved into using just modular synthesizers. And I've been kind of a fan of modular synthesizer work now for a little while. I've discovered the band Survive about 5 or 6 years ago, and they kind of set me on this path of like old school retro synthesizer music. And it's been a while since I've found another synth album that kind of really grabbed my attention the same way that Survive did. This is kind of the first one that does it. It doesn't do it the same way as Survive. Venetian Snares are a lot more complex, a lot more experimental than Survive. And it's just one guy. It's just this guy, Aaron Funk. So what's really fascinating about this album to me is that he really went for trying to find a way to make all this kind of naturally repetitive style of music to sound more spontaneous. If you don't know much about modular synthesizers, I mean, that's the instrument that gave us the bass line for I Feel Love. Sounds like, you know, that hit. And that's one of the things that makes that song work, is that it's very driving and it's very repetitive. But what Aaron Funk was doing with Venetian Snares on this one was trying to find ways to tweak modular synthesizers to make them sound more spontaneous. And he has a little blurb on the back of the album where he talks about this. You know, each of these recordings on this album are kind of like a live performance. It's what you can have a live performance with modular synthesizers, in that he has this big wall of synthesizers, a big wall of jacks and knobs, and from nothing he starts plugging things in. He was, you know, making patches and putting things together. And then after 2 or 3 days of building up a synthesizer rack that worked, then he would make 2 or 3 recordings and tear it all down and then do it again. So each of these songs on this album are kind of live in a way, in that he didn't put them in through MIDI. He didn't build them up like by constructing them in the computer. He actually kind of let the modular synthesizer, the way the modular synthesizer works, shape the way that he created the music on the album. Aaron Funk's got a real thing for odd time signatures and kind of disorienting rhythmic structures. So the whole album, I don't think there's a 4/4 song on the entire album. They're all like in 5 and in 7 and 11, and we'll find out later even more interesting subdivisions. But he makes it work. And once you kind of see how the grooves work on this album, it's a masterpiece, in my opinion, more like it's a in-depth examination of what kind of grooves are possible using odd time signatures, unusual time signatures. So to give you an example of what all this kind of sounds like, he has a video up of him actually, you know, recording one of his tracks. So we'll show you kind of just a little brief overview of what's happening now. If you watch very carefully, you can kind of see some things work. If you don't know much about synthesizers, it's going to just look like a blank wall. But watch really carefully how the parts interact with each other as you watch this clip. Okay, so I don't know much about modular synthesizers, really. I have a great deal of respect for them. I generally know how they work, but there's a lot more going on there that I don't understand. But I can sort of see, like, all this is a bunch of chords and lights, but how the lights kind of pass off to one another and show how the different parts of the music kind of fit together and jagged. It's very interesting. So I find that even though it seems like you're kind of staring at a wall of lights, it's all a very fascinating way of a kind of insight as to how that music fits together. And clearly the sound set that he's using is that kind of classic Moog synthesizer sound. And as such, it's got this real sort of like retrofuturist thing going on. Like the Moog synthesizer automatically kind of brings to mind the late 60s, the sound of the late 60s and early 70s. It was like the innovative sound at the time. And if you weren't listening to things like Yes, where Rick Wakeman was using, keyboards, Moog style keyboards, Keith Emerson was using Moog style keyboards, you still had those happening in the background. I mean, if any old Doctor Who, BBC, Radiophonic Workshop soundtrack had a Moog synthesizer on it. So it's kind of that time. But what's funny about it is using those synthesizers back then was sort of giving people an idea of what the future was going to sound like. And of course, the future ended up sounding a little bit different. So if you were there at that time, I mean, I was a very young child during that time, but I have this sort of vague memory of like kind of weird sci-fi music that uses this Moog synthesizer sound in the background. It definitely is evocative, I think, of like this sort of the way we thought the future would be, and it's wasn't that. It's this sort of challenge. This whole package, I think, if you include the album art and everything, kind of refers to that mindset. Find all sorts of weird stuff on the internet, can't you? But anyway, that particular song, if you delve really deeply into the rhythm in that one, that song feels so jarring. Even though it kind of almost feels like it could be a dance groove to it, but it's very jarring because the way that I hear it is that it's like a 4 full beats with one set of 3 16 notes at the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1. So you can look at it that way. It's almost like it's in 1916 if you really want to get super technical with it. For me, that's fascinating. For a person who's like, I think about that kind of music, how you can make that kind of time signature sound like something that's not just completely crazy. I find that fascinating. To the person who's just kind of walking up to it, it may be a little bit overwhelming, which is why I kind of chose that song as an example. Like, if you can get behind that song, it's one of the more frenetic and disorienting songs in the album, then you will definitely lock right into the rest of it, because that's kind of as far out as it goes, I think. And the other kind of caveat I have with the album, because you have those sort of really intense, complicated things going on in this music, it can be kind of exhausting. By the end of the album, you've been almost assaulted by all of this kind of like jagged, angular, almost spastic feeling music going on in there. By the end, it feels like a bit much. But once you can kind of lock into the grooves and see how the rhythms fit together, and how he's using these really great little melodic fragments to tie them all together and make it seem less just like crazy in a way. It helps to ground the whole experience. then there's a lot that you can really appreciate with the album. I would really suggest checking this out if you like synth music at all, especially. If complexity doesn't bother you, it's well worth checking out. And Aaron Funk has generated a whole lot of interest because of his body of work, and for me personally because of this album. But he's still, the Venetian Snares project is still kind of a marginal project. So certainly I really suggest supporting the artist by buying the album in one form or another. It's available on vinyl. It'd be very interesting to have a vinyl copy of this. It would be very well suited to its aesthetic, I think, to have a vinyl copy of this to spin. So anyway, this is the album I would, for me, a really top album of mine last year that I have come back to again this year as I was preparing for this, and really have enjoyed it even more coming back into it. There's so much to listen to once you can kind of find how it works. So I would check it out if I was you. And that's all I got today. I want to see you guys next week. Please, like me below, subscribe, whatever it is you do to get notifications that I'm around, so that you'll know when things go up. All right. And if I don't hear from anybody else, that'll be it. Also, I have been kind of also dropping hints here and there as to what albums I'm going to be reviewing. So keep your eyes open, especially over on the Instagram. I'm kind of like dropping hints in there. So keep your eyes open. But until then, I'll catch you guys on the flip side.